Hello, friends. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're going to take a slightly different approach to our weekly discussions. We've obviously been doing solo discussions as well as been getting in other participants as well to talk about various aspects of the Sanatan universe. But we realized that we need to actually start answering some questions of our viewers as well. Thank you so much for your support over the last few weeks. We've had some questions come through, and we thought we'll tailor them in a format that might address things that probably crop into the mind of someone who's starting off on the path. It was actually good, and in the preparation for this video, it was actually good for us because we got a chance to address some of our basics. So the way it's going to work is that I'm going to pose these questions to Abhi, whom you are very familiar with. He conducts lots of talks, and I'm going to see what he has to say about them. Abhi, are you ready?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to add to that, Vishal, so for all our viewers in English, we thought, because we're trying to get to the basics of Sanatan and explore it, we will go through both the languages, both English and Hindi for our viewers. And this one we are doing as a 30-minute talk. We're bringing a new concept, 30 minutes of Sanatan, and it would be both in Hindi and English, obviously covering different topics. It won't be like a reproduction of the same stuff, basically. So just to give some thought to this. And yeah, as Rishal has said, we've had a lot of feedback, response from people who have been listening to us. So this has given us a lot of food of thought, what we want to do next and how we should be going about it. And some of these questions were really intriguing. So we thought about talking about them today. So yeah, Rishal, I'm ready to see what our viewers are asking us.
I'm going to put you on the spot here because, as we had agreed, I did the due diligence around checking out the questions. So, for all viewers, Abhi has not had sight of these questions. And so here we go. So this is actually someone's sort of emailed this question through, and in fact, I had a discussion with some of my friends around this as well. They asked a very elementary question: what is God,
What is God?
or who is God?
I think I have touched about this in our previous videos, but just to summarize, um, or to give it a completely different picture to what I have spoken before. God is certainly not the person you see in a picture calendar, with the seven arms and the seven faces or something. That's just a visual depiction of of energy. Which has various elements of doing different things. It's a very strong energy. First of all, let's understand it. It's the most primordial energy. It's the most important energy which helps in keeping the balance in this universe, because we know how big this universe can be. Even in light years, if I go, even 150 trillion or trillion years would be a smaller duration if we start talking in numbers, right? For a universe, ever expanding universe, and how many constellations and how many galaxies, right? So there has to be something which is keeping this into place, and its momentum in place, its inertia in place, everything in place. And I think that energy for me is that primordial energy. I feel that energy we call God. Over the period of time, different faiths have tried to give it their own structure, monolithic or other structures to it. And don't get me wrong, Sanatan Dharma also talks about them in different formats. As I have explained, Shiva is the energy which helps to keep the cycle rolling on. Brahma is the energy who helps in creation, basically, and sustaining the creation part of it. And Vishnu is the person who keeps nourishing. And Shiva, being the destroyer, is just one element of it, because once something has been created, if it has to come back, it has to be destroyed, then only it can come back. So Shiva plays that double role in this whole format. And if you think about them, they have their own functions, but eventually they are energies. And the whole concept of Purush and Nari is what the positive and the negative, and it always symbolizes to that whole concept of the Ardhanarishwar Roop, of which creates the whole cosmos, basically Shiva and Adi Shakti, basically, right? And you can interpret it any way, but I think our forefathers were very intelligent. Our rishis, especially our maharishis and rishis, were very intelligent, and they knew how they would go about explaining this to a common man, say 20,000 years ago, when no science, no books, no nothing. Can you talk in these terms? Can you actually use these terms? I don't think so, right? Hence this visual depiction of God in this format. And if you see, this visual depiction also changes. Sometimes Shiva has a beard, sometimes he's clean shaven. So how is this happening? Right? So I treat it as an imaginary illustration by an artist, more or less, rather than an actual thing which is actually in that form. Don't get me wrong, I'm fully Sanatani, but all I'm trying to say is it's an energy which can manifest in any format, in any form. And when it can manifest it in any form, you can give it any visual depiction you want it to.
Sure.
So I'll summarize it this way.
So when I pose this question to some other friends, the answer I got from them, and we can actually delve into that answer, is the person who created the universe. That, according to them, was God. So they said, well, I guess and this was their opinion, that well, the debate is still out. Was it Jesus? Was it Allah? Was it Shiv or Vishnu, or who was it? The moment we identify who that particular personage was, that person will become God. Now, my counter to that was on the lines that the name in some ways is immaterial. The name doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, what we are talking, and this is something that you just referred to right now, Abhi, is that everything in the universe is matter. At the end of the day, matter comes from a void, and it finishes. And when it's done its job, then it gets sucked back into a void. In some ways, God is that void. God is that void from which all matter, all energy manifests. And the names that we give, which of course have been sort of created as a result of the different faiths and the different traditions, they have some significance, but at the end of the day, the name doesn't really matter. You can refer to Shiv by the name of Shiv has 108 or more names, same as does Vishnu. But very often, and you'll find this in our scriptures as well, they're often referred to by the other person's name. So Shiv can be referred to by one of the names of Vishnu, and vice versa. And the significance of that is that the actual name, or it doesn't really matter if we want to say that X God created the universe. God is in many ways Nirakar or Nirgun, which if we were to say means attributeless, and thus even the Abrahamic concept of God, wherein God is formless and attributeless, quite in many ways marries the Sanatan concept of the Parabrahma. Of course,
Allah is just like Parabrahm, isn't it? He's also not. He doesn't have a form. He doesn't have anything else. He's just a monolithic thing, like the way I was talking about Shiva and Shakti being one. Basically, the primordial energy being one. Basically, yeah. Sorry.
So, of course, in Sanatan, we have the luxury, let's say, of various sakar forms of gods, or forms of God, or God in a physical form, in a way that the average man on the street can relate to them. The danger, or let's say the fallout of this, is that very often one of these sakar forms may be taken to mean the ultimate God, but that's not the case. The ultimate God is that void into which everything gets sucked into at the time of dissolution, and it is from that void that everything emanates. And look, modern science may term it the Big Bang theory. At the end of the day, it is the same concept as the Hiranyagarbha, which bursts open and out comes Brahma, the creator.
Exactly. And if you see so many manifestations in the universe, even the galaxy, the way it is designed, don't you think it looks like a Shivaling in some places. Like it looks like an enormous ecliptical, projection of an eclipse only, basically. And similarly, if you see a nuclear reactor, which is nuclear science we study today, it's like a shivering. So why is this so much connection in everything? Because everything is starting from the same place. It has the roots from the same place. It has the same concepts, energy, matter, which is what you just said, right? And I think it manifests in different ways. And as I explained, 20,000 years or even 1 million a year ago, whenever Sanatan was at its starting point, basically, you can't go and talk to people in that format in which we are talking today. We never had the luxury of pen, the writing being invented or any of that stuff. So think from that perspective. And I think, as I mentioned, I want to just come to this point again. Our rishis were so clever that they did these depictions. So sometimes you see Kali has so many, or Durga has so many forms, right? And all of them merge into one. So it becomes female energy, right? Similarly, all the male energies merge into one, into Mahashiv, or the primordial Shiva, basically. And if you see, I'm going to touch that in one of our future videos which we are doing. Hanumanji, which has a Panchmukhi roop as well, has some faces from the Vishnu Das avatars, like the Vara roop and the other ones. And similarly, he's considered to be a Rudra avatar. So what is this all trying to tell us? It's not trying to confuse us. I think it's trying to tell us it's the same energy. It is taking different forms. It is joining and combining and creating something new. And that's what happens with energy. Energy can manifest, energy can divide, energy can subtract, add, and recreate itself. And that's what is the whole concept of, I think, this supreme energy, which we call God. Yeah.
And to that, I'd like to add, I mean, as you are probably aware, I've done a little bit of research on other traditions as well. I've read up a little bit about Greek and Egyptian traditions or mythologies, if we were to use that word. And the thing is that a lot of the deities described there are very similar to our Vedic deities. When I say Vedic deities, I'm referring to Indra and the other gods, who we might now term as demigods, or the Devtas. Now, to distinguish them from the Parabrahma concept that we have been talking about, I would like to say that those Devtas are steps to help us reach the higher realms. So the Devtas are not the gods in themselves, but and I can tell the background for this, for me talking about this, is because one of my friends raised a question that, well, weren't we worshipping the forces of nature until we discovered we can conquer the moon? Well, I think conquering the moon, I told him, was a bit of an ambitious statement. I don't think we've conquered it per se. We have landed on it. But yes, there is a concept of the moon god in Sanatan, and indeed in other cultures as well. But what that means is that the moon is, or Indra or the sun or whosoever, is a step to take us to an even higher realm. And if you were to view it from a Sanatan perspective, Indra and the other gods, they reside in Swargloka, but Swarg is only at number 3 amongst the 7 loks, or the 7 higher realms of existence, the topmost of which takes us to Brahma. So I think it is important for us to bring out this distinction, but also at the same time specify that at the end of the day, even Hinduism or Sanatan Dharma is a monotheistic religion.
Exactly.
And the various forms of gods that we see are diminishing forms of that same supreme energy. They've been reduced to a certain format, or brought into or manifest in a certain way, such that we can relate to them better. I think you would agree on that, Abhi.
No, absolutely. And I wanted to touch base on the point you were saying, that if you say at Devatas, like they have a particular quality. So they're also like energy, like, sun gives us solar energy, right? So it's a Devta. And then wind has a particular wind energy, which is what we harness, right? So it is another Devta. Everything which is called a Devta in Sanatan culture has a particular
Devta is someone who gives in a way, to the extent that we cannot return it to them.
Exactly. So they are giving that energy, but then this primordial energy is obviously at the highest standard,
Correct.
at the highest level. And in order for you to, see the difference is that this energy can change into any format and do anything. But
Yeah.
these energy, these devatas have a specific function. They have a specific energy which is being harnessed in a particular way. It cannot be harnessed in any way, right? It has its own limitations. So it is still an energy, right? But it can be done in a specific way, not every way possible. And I think
Correct.
that's what defines that. And if you want to explain this to a physics student today, you can, right? You've learned physics, physics, astronomy, many things. How would you explain this to a primitive person? That's why I keep saying that this is why these analogies were created, I believe.
And
That
that's why I
devata,
think the divine hierarchy has been instituted so that people can understand the differences and use that as a means to step up the ladder. So Indra also Indra was not always an Indra. When we talk of the cosmic time scale, he was another being in his previous birth. It is due to his accumulated good karma that he rose to the level of Indra. So, say for instance, in the next Manavantar, that is the next age of yugs, Bali, who was a demon, will be elevated to the status of Indra. It's because he has pleased Vishnu with his devotion, Lord Vishnu with his devotion, and in his karma and in his deeds, he was generous and took care of his public, of his citizens, and therefore he acquired merit enough to rise to a level. And therefore, these interim level of deities are in a way a source of inspiration for us that if we are to lead a spiritual life and abide by the spiritual and moralistic life, then we also have a chance of rising up the divine hierarchy. I think, and therefore, they are not gods in themselves; they are intermediary deities. And I think it's important for our viewers and for the general public to appreciate this difference. That at the end of the day, God is one, or God is uniform, rather than using the word one, which is often used as a way of uniting different faiths. I think we should say God is uniform across all cultures.
it is
Perfect.
always the case. Yeah. Let's move on to the next one, Prashil. Yeah.
Yes, of course. So the next question that our viewers have sent through is, what is the purpose of religion? What is the purpose of having a dharma? Can we not lead a normal life without, the requirements of dharma, bhakti, faith, whatever you may want to term it? Because nowadays we have an increasing trend of atheists and agnostics who have very little to do with whichever religion they have been born into, and but yet seem to be leading perfect lives, prosperous lives, and live as law-abiding citizens. So, what value add is there from recognizing your roots or your cultures or trying to imbibe some of the teachings in your life?
Yeah, very, very good question. And I would ask them that why do you think they were born on Earth? Why not born on Jupiter or, Mars or some other planets? And realistically you can't survive on Jupiter because it's so cold and so many other things. Leaving that point aside, but why do you think why we are on Earth? And why is there so much of vegetation, so much of beauty, so many mountains and lakes and oceans and everything? Why have we been given this all? Basically, isn't that and I would come to this basic primordial question again. I think when God decided to create the human race, basically, right? Or any kind of race, be it animals or plants or anything, right? There was a bigger purpose to this that, I am creating this so that you can go there, experience all this, but not get so attached to it that you don't want to come back, right? The whole purpose was that you go there, you explore it, learn it, enhance your capabilities, become more mature in your consciousness, raise your consciousness level, and then, when the time comes when you have to leave a body, everybody has to, every animal, everything, even a plant dies. Nothing is for forever in this universe. Let's get that straight, right? Even a sun will die after some time. It's decided what time our sun will die, which time Milky Way will die, which time another galaxy would die, and when all that will die, how that black hole will be created, and what will happen with that black hole, and what all that is decided. All scientists have done those calculations. So there is an element of nothing is permanent, right? So you are coming, doing a job, you're looking at this beautiful world, you're manifesting here, you're raising your consciousness, and then you have to, when you're finished, you have to go back. into your primordial state again, merge into it, or you will be recreated, something on those lines, right? The whole idea, I personally believed, was that you go, you learn, but you enhance yourself so that you're ready for the next process, basically, so that you're ready to absorb even more when you come back. You are at a higher level. That's how, if your consciousness level is not going to rise, how would Bali, as Rushil was explaining, become an Ind? How would I, as Abhi, in my future 10 or 15 births from now, become somebody else, of a higher state, of a higher manifestation, right? And if you say that doesn't matter, then you won't probably remember it, but your soul will remember it. See, one thing is for sure, in Sanatan Dharma, or be in any dharma, right? There is a soul and there is a body. The soul continues to move on, the body remains, basically, right? So for the manifestation of the soul to higher consciousness, it is very important that this process continues. So it's not that you've come here for one purpose only. You just come here, enjoy life, sit on the beach, smoke as much as marijuana you want, and and do parties only, right? There is a purpose, that you have to go and do meditation, you have to do your siddhi or your yogas or anything whichever can help you elevate your consciousness to the higher state, so that your process of evolution continues. That's how we became from ape to humans. That's also a true thing, right? At one point of time we were apes, we've been evolving, and we became humans, right? And now we are ready to go to even further stages of which are possible, which we can't manifest at this point of time. We don't know what will happen, but I'm pretty sure 1 million years ago, later, this human race would be completely different from the human race we have right now. And that would be only possible because we have been constantly raising our consciousness. There is no other single truth to this whole thing, that it is all about the Atma, the soul, the consciousness, and the levels of consciousness and how you can raise them, basically. So
are you
religion gives
suggesting
that path.
that the main purpose of such an elaborate faith, or let's say, and let's call it complex faith as well, is such that every living being can enhance their future life? Is that the purpose of
future
religion?
future life, and future and the level of their soul, because the soul continues, as I said, right?
Yeah.
So you have to go through a progression, right? You won't like to sit in class 1 only all the time, right?
So,
You
so
want to go to
would
class
we
2.
would should we not identify ourselves? And I'm playing a bit of a devil's advocate here. Should we not identify ourselves as Abhi or Rushil, as the person we are, as we are X person's son and whatever, and we have a certain professional profile as well? Should we not identify ourselves as that, or should we see us just as a soul that is
We
on
sh-
this
I
journey?
think I think I think it's important to see as a soul. I think it's very important to see us as a soul, because if I'm Abhi and I'm doing these things, or working in a particular way, if my soul goes into some other format or something, it doesn't mean that I would suddenly become very cruel or very tyrant kind of a person. It's my soul. It's my inherent characteristics which will keep on going in the same format. What
Right.
might change is that I might become a much more learned person, much more evolved person, much more knowledgeable person. But what won't change is that my inherent characteristics won't change, basically, right? And that's what the soul is. That's what the Atma is. Why do we say ki you are a good soul and you are a bad soul? Why do we use that term, by the way, right? We say this because we know this person's qualities are such and such that he has a good soul, he has a good Atma. And that's the whole thing. And what is Atma, right? And Paramatma. Param Atma means the topmost Atma, and you are just a Atma. So, in order for an Atma to become a Paramatma, you have to go through these stages, right? And God gave us those places. He gave us the oceans, He gave us the mountains, He gave us the lakes. Go and sit and enjoy that, but at the same time, don't forget that you have to meditate. I think Shiva gives us the biggest example of this. He lives in the most beautiful place, Kailas, right? It's scenic, amazing place, right? But most of the time he's in meditation. Why do you think so? Because he's trying to show to us a path that you can be at the most beautiful place, but you can still be a detached person.
That
Most important is
that actually brings me to another question, which I will touch upon a little later in this talk. I'll just stop you there. But I think to add to what you said, a significant proportion of the Sanatan faith talks about spiritual knowledge, which I think we would term as paravidya. But at the same time, there is also what is called aparavidya, which is the other branches of knowledge, and those could be anything from political, philosophy, medicinal, arithmetic, anything. And that's why you find, and we've making these discoveries at an increasing rate these days, that a lot of the scientific or mathematical advancements which have only occurred sort of in the 20th century, have actually been documented in some of the most ancient of shastras
exactly.
or books by our rishis. And so I guess in addition to the
And which is
spiritual
what
side of
science
things,
say that, yeah, which is what science
sorry, what
says
I
is
was saying
paranormal.
is, what I
Yeah.
was saying, Abhi, was that in addition to the spiritual side, which we have already spoken of at length, there is also these other branches of knowledge which actually will assist us in our day-to-day lives, in our regular lives. So even if you are
Exactly.
at this point in time not spiritually tuned, say for instance, you don't believe that there is another, that the soul has a higher purpose and the fact that it will evolve into a different, you will evolve into a different being in the future, you still have, say, Arth Shastra. Yes, of course, Kautilya or Chanakya is famous for Arth Shastra. But the original Arthashastra was written by none other than Brihaspati. Brihaspati was who? He was the guru of the Devs, and he's identified with the planet Jupiter, which you just made mention of. So, so do you see this? Do you see the connect? The military shastra, or basically military science, is compiled in a book called Dhanurved. Yes, of course, it has come down to us through various gurus and through a disciplic succession. But the original source of that is Shiva. Medicinal is medical science. The source of that is Dhanvantri. Now, Dhanvantri, who was Dhanvantri? You are aware. Dhanvantri was the person who came out of the at the time of the Samudra Manthan, churning of the ocean, with the Amrit in his hand. Now, that is a symbolic story to state that he was the originator of medical science. Basically, he was able to diagnose an elixir for life, and that elixir for life is not. It hasn't. Yes, it is not freely available, but it hasn't disappeared. It is the same elixir of life, which in a different format saved Lakshman's life at the time of the Ramayana. So the point is that even if you were to completely ignore the spiritual side for a start, you have these various other branches which are integral part of Sanatan, which come under the appellation of Aparavidya, that also provide a treasure trove of knowledge for us, for the common man, to benefit from. And simply turning a back on it, saying that, oh, it looks too improbable. Okay, Shiva, who's this person who's meditating on the top of a mountain or sleeping on an ocean? By ridiculing or turning a back on the stories, because at this point it sounds
Yeah,
a little preposterous,
touched
you're
about
losing out
upon these.
on a lot of wealth, which has already been provided to mankind. It's just we've been looking away from it. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, I just wanted to say that we've touched about these things also, how these feats were possible. I touched about that from a physics point of view, that, when two frequencies are same, there is resonance, and multiple phenomena have been possible because of that. And obviously, but just to summarize, I think you've summarized it actually quite well. And we are actually coming to the 30 minutes closure of our,
It's fine. I'm sure the topic is interesting enough for people to listen
Yeah,
to
no,
it
but
longer.
we'll continue on it, Rushil, on the next two questions on the next session. But for today, I think we've summarized it well. And I want to add to that, all these people who feel that there is no energy or no reason for a religion, I think they have still not understood the purpose of life. For them, there is something I think is still missing, which is that moment in their life which will make them explain the purpose of life. It's all about the understanding the purpose of life. Why Earth? Why, as I mentioned, so many other planets, right? But none of them are habitable. Everything is being proven, right? Somewhere it's gaseous, somewhere it's cold, or whatever, So coming back to the whole story of it, Earth, and why Sanatan Dharma evolved here, how it is the most primordial religion, and how it talks about the primordial energy, and in various formats, giving us the flexibility of understanding it in different ways possible, is the beauty of this Dharma. And we need to keep talking and explaining about this to people who like whom you met, who asked you these questions. So let's catch up in on the following questions in the next episode of Simply Sanatan. Thank you to all our viewers for today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers.